Palm Sunday is nearly upon us, the time when Jesus of Nazareth is welcomed into Jerusalem like a king. This is a time where Jesus made himself known to the masses, as it was said in prophecy. Letting someone know who you are is important. It's how we start our understanding of each other. And it often starts with a name. When Moses asked God who he was talking to, God answered, "I am who I am." Trusting someone who you don't know, or believing them for that matter, is a difficult thing, for all they might claim credentials or endorsements. Only some people happen to know who I am as a person, and of that number, some might not even know my opinions on some topics, such as evolution, flat earth, the Big Bang, football, or pineapple on pizza. If you're interested. Yes, no, sort of, don't watch it, food is food. So for those of you who are new to the channel, or are just wondering who this specky Jesus lookalike is, this video is my story. So sit back for a cup of tea, or in my case, a glass of gin, and listen. I was born into a high Anglican church-going family, as the youngest of 3 boys. Having had heart surgery for a drastic condition at an extremely young age, my developmental coordination was hampered somewhat, though I wasn't properly diagnosed for many years. All I knew about it was I struggled at school with written work, got distracted easily, and had to have regular checkups at the hospital every 2 or 3 years. This distraction and limited concentration meant church was a bit of a chore for me. And although I was invited to join the choir, I knew, even at that tender age, I wouldn't have the dedication for it. My views on God weren't exactly developed, since my lack of concentration meant lessons, even in Sunday school, made little sense to me at the time. I believed simply because I saw no reason not to. When I was around 10, I joined the altar serving team at my church as an acolyte. And to this day, I have no idea why I bounced for joy when my dad wanted me to preach. I really don't know why. Unfortunately, during my secondary school years and early teens, I started to doubt, and then eventually lost my faith in God. I wasn't exactly a hardcore denouncer, but I could see flaws in many classic church teachings. Since I was dealing with an extreme level of bullying that left me paranoid and lacking trust in authority figures, I took things into my own hands to protect myself and stop them from hurting me. Compounding this, the support I needed at school, having finally been diagnosed with dyspraxia, was removed for pointless reasons, and one of the teachers even said that children with dyspraxia can never achieve equivalent levels to the other students. This caused me to lose a great deal of trust in people older than me. I became a little bit of a rebel, you could say. No wonder I turned my back on God at the time. This darker time in my life could have turned me down some very dark roads, if it wasn't for horses. I've been keen on horses for years, having been pony trekking on holidays with my family, more than a few times, and I've always enjoyed the experience. Not all forms of personal independent riding were possible, as few riding schools nearby, and the long drive to the stables weren't always manageable. Whilst I did spend about a year or so at a relatively local RDA in Hemel Hempstead, I didn't really start off my horsemanship career, as it were, until my grandma found me a local horsemanship group and gave me the best birthday present I could ever ask for: a share in one of the horses. This was the break I needed. I could advance how I wanted, when I wanted, and was able to do so with help and guidance from people who went from youth leaders to close and very dear friends. With their help, I was able to advance the way I wanted, against what many people would say. A lot improved at that time. I moved to a different school and made great strides in my work. The trauma I faced from my former bullying had left its mark, but with the experience of genuine terror behind me, I was fully set to handle the seemingly childish behaviour of this school's terror waves. My grades improved, and I became more confident. I began to make a name for myself in the music department. I was never a backroom person when it came to music, and whilst I wasn't in the church choir, music became the way I stood at, singing solos at tender ages, learning instruments that stood out from the rest, adapting songs into new styles, and showing people that I may struggle at times, but I am not stupid. Throughout this time of stress, growth, and religious doubt, I remained part of my church, growing from an acolyte to holding the cross of the crucifer, supporting the church choir, and joining them on our annual choir holiday as part of the catering team, specialising in puddings and getting dinner underway whilst the others were at evensong. Combined with horsemanship and gaining many friends at the pony share scheme, I was growing more and more. The leaders of the PSS were faithful Christians, and not only had an open invitation to their church, but went on an annual visit to a worship festival set up by Soul Survivor. Since they not only kept the door open for all, but were encouraging and supportive of horsemanship, they started me back on the road to God. Though I didn't know that at the time. Whilst my faith in God had been gone for some time, I was less inclined towards the teaching and general views of the church. I continued with choir week out of lifelong habit and duty. I've been doing it since I was very small. My serving duties had become just as much a part of life as anything else. And whilst I wasn't certain about the existence of God, I felt it was best to attend church when I needed to, when I was needed to serve, so I could confess my sins and stay on his good side. It's not exactly a good Christian mindset, but it was a foundation of a faith that rekindled in my mid-teens. All that restarted with the Babelfish, a fictional creature from Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've done a whole video about how that came about and the reasoning behind it. It's a bit mad to say the least, but it was a good foundation for an event that put me squarely on the road back to God. To sum it up, on a big trip with the PSS, one vehicle convoy suffered a crash that had all of us in a panic. Our leader asked us to pray for the people in the crash. Not being in the habit of praying, I prayed as best I could, and many miracles happened that day. Again, I'd cover the whole list in another video. Please check that out. Should be in the card. It was that, plus a long-awaited visit to Soul Survivor, that brought me back. This was helpful because I was just leaving school to start work at a heritage centre. My big brother said I'd somehow managed to turn my favourite game from when I was 6 into a job at that centre. Can't blame him. Angus the Warrior had a hard time at work, but with the support of a buoyant newfound faith and increased responsibility with the horses, I was able to develop and, as I like to think of it, find my earth. All seemed to go well. I had an apprenticeship under my belt. There was the promise of another one, prospects of more work and more money. When promises weren't being kept, however, it became clear that to remain was ill-advised. I could have stuck around, but I probably wouldn't be the man I am today. Fortunately, I had an aunt living in Australia at the time. She'd been there for a number of years, and she put up the call for people to come to her 50th birthday party. My parents had just retired at the time, and so they accepted the invitation. And they suggested that since my work tended to die off through the British winter, I should do some itinerary work whilst down under. I took this opportunity and made plans. As my plans progressed, I decided this was my time to leave the Heritage Centre. I handed in my notice, accidentally starting a mass exodus. And when I took my last visit at Soul Survivor, I gave my life to Jesus for the second time. I gave my life to Jesus in service when I joined the serving team when I was 10 years old. And at 22, I gave my life to him in trust, so I could rely on him for my travels. Being practical faith at the time was useful, but I needed God in a slightly different way. This faith wasn't to be disappointed. Throughout my travels in Australia, God showed himself in many remarkable ways. The first church I walked into opened its arms to me and gave me more dinners and more lunches than I'd ever expected. I found I remained in places where I was accepted far longer than those where they didn't understand or were just plain rude at times. Going from one church to another, I got a good idea of what each denomination had going for it, and what that meant for the church as a whole. Some branches had strong feelings on certain topics. Others had a more nuanced approach to faith in general. Some would rage and shake their fists about people's sins. Some were quieter and more open about their own transgressions. Some had a fantastical array of musical instruments which they used in worship, from the great organ to the humble ukulele. Others struggled to get the CDs to play. Almost inevitably, being in Australia, I came across Hillsong. I'd heard its music more than a few times when I was in the UK. But one day I was in Brisbane, and I was doing my usual thing of scanning around looking for a church, as I normally do. And I saw Hillsong. I went along to see what it was like. I was welcomed once more with open arms. Ever since then, I made the effort to attend where and when I could. This led me to their Worship Creative Conference in Sydney, starting up at their main campus of Hills. For all its faults, difficulties getting there, and weird times of service, the conference gave me the inspiration to start doing this YouTube channel. I'd done something similar some years before, but lost motivation to do it due to the amount of work in the process. That and the fact I was trying to strike a balance between two extremes. The deeply faithful, biblically minded, and somewhat repelling fundamentalists of the Christian faith, and the highbrow, intellectual, and depressingly cynical denouncers and naysayers. One being unwilling to let people in or out of the fold. The other inclined to draw people away from the light and cast doubts and shadows on the good Lord. It's like finding a balance between a neutron star and a hard vacuum. A fine balance, to be sure, but one that can be done with enough study and preparation. Now, however, your work ethic in stark contrast to that of some co-workers left in my wake. I began writing up the essays for the new videos, studying parts of the Bible that didn't make sense, borrowing ideas from some preachers and developing them, and looking at situations where God in the world around us seemed to contradict the biblical God. Not having studied theology, I decided to name my studies experimental theology, after Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials. It's in a similar vein to experimental archaeology, effectively testing ideas against both the Bible and everyday life, to see what fits and what doesn't. This led to some interesting finds, and some thought experiments that are and will be made into videos, so you guys can hopefully see what God is like. Some of you might right now be quoting the Gospel of Luke. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. But I will say that it says in the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 15, the simple believe every word, but the prudent man considers well his steps. I'm testing people's ideas about God and finding out what that can tell us about God, and then comparing it to what I'm finding in the scriptures. Seeing how, as a whole, we can identify the good Lord. Some of you may be wondering why the name Warrior Pilgrim. The answer is, that's what I am, both a warrior and a pilgrim. A warrior isn't a soldier, just so you're wondering. A soldier fights for king and country, fights for a dedicated cause. And he's not a mercenary. A mercenary fights for his pocket. Definitely not a warlord because he fights for himself. A warrior fights for what he believes in. It could be a cause, it could be for a king. But it's definitely for something he believes in. A pilgrim goes where God sends him and does what he's told to do. He's not a monk who generally remains in his monastery and teaches about the Lord in isolation and celibacy. He's not a bishop who controls a diocese and how it teaches. He goes very sent and speaks about God. Strangely enough, it became more or less a heavenly directive in a strange encounter I had when I was in Melbourne. I was doing a study period there, working as well, but studying for this long-term project, and I was invited to lunch with the Hillsong crowd. When we were at lunch, we were joined by a couple of prophets. They started a conversation by, well, the wife pointed at me and said, "You will have an Asian wife." A strange conversation started, to be sure. But during lunch, and even afterwards, we had riveting conversations about the nature of prophets, spiritual warfare, and God in general. They rounded off the afternoon with what could also be called a knighting ceremony, where they endorsed me with spiritual powers and presented me with an arsenal of spiritual weapons so large and powerful that if they weren't in the spiritual plane, I wouldn't have made it back to my hostel without the police stopping me and saying, "Excuse me, sir, why are you carrying so many weapons from Melbourne? Come on, mate. You're not in Norwich anymore." That's your strange story. There's this spiritual endorsement, especially the fact that I have been covering some very controversial topics in my most recent essay at the time, that confirmed I needed to start this work done to me now. And so here I am. Whilst this may seem a channel for churchgoers, and I don't blame you, and certainly I would like it to be like that in this time where church is closed, it is for all who are interested in a different perspective of the scriptures and how God moves in the world around us. You could say it's for scholars, you could say it's for the faithful, you could say it's for pilgrims. You could also say that for those who are curious and just wondering, is there another spin on this? Some ideas are hard to grasp. Certainly harder for some people who just want to believe one thing. It requires a process of extraction, realigning, and reinserting to make sense of it, examining the context within and without the Bible, and taking ideas from other sources to bulk out the information base. Ultimately, you can lead to conclusions that don't make sense at first, may seem completely wacky or wild, or just seem distasteful to some people. But sometimes that's the way studies go. It's like finding out your favourite food is not only from a country that you hate, or just have some major disagreement with on some ethical, but also you're cooking it in a way that is poisonous compared to the traditional manner done in that country. I'm willing to admit I'm not perfect, but I'm making the best of a difficult situation. And in that case, not everyone's going to be happy about it. You'll nearly always find that when you're making the best of a difficult situation, someone is going to be upset. Because you're not making the best decision you can do overall, but the best one at the time. If you're curious to find out what I'm going to find, what I can come up with, I'm just wondering if, who knows, I might have something else, I might have something on this. Or you want to challenge me to change your mind about this. I suggest that you stay tuned for the next few videos. I've literally got a long list of things that I really want to get out soon. Next week is about how so many Christians tend to close down God. How they tend to, as I put it, put him in a box. If you want to make it easier on yourself, then click the subscribe button and don't forget the notification bell so you get told when the next video lands. It's super easy. Any suggestions for topics to cover in future videos, or biblical passages I've missed somehow and certainly should take a look at, please leave them in the comments below. Until then, just remember, in this time, we're on a rough road. Stick together, stay safe, and may the Lord God be with us all.